Okay, guys, there was a really big decision recently here at the San Diego City Council. They passed sweeping amendments to regulate ADUs. Now, the details about this are not all 100% clear, but let's talk about some of the general things we do know. There was this massive City Council meeting. I say massive. It was a regular sized meeting just with a lot of more people coming in to voice their opinion. I saw here that there was nearly 200 people that came and spoke at this meeting. Memo, you were watching this at your desk. So I saw you watching this and people giving their public comments. So let's talk about what's going on with the ADU. What were some of the problems for anyone who's not aware of it? Well, let's catch them up. What were some of the problems and what are some of the pros and cons of the arguments that are being made?
I don't know that there was a lot of pros.
Yeah, I don't think people really like the cul-de-sac complexes.
So let's tell the audience who maybe don't know, or maybe it's not happening. Maybe they're fortunate enough that the problems aren't happening in their neighborhood. Let's talk about a couple of that to kind of set the tone for what we got to talk about.
Yeah, one of the biggest complaints was actually this whole bonus ADUs where you were just practically unlimited to build these ADUs. So you could have a single family resident in the back, you're building an A10 ADUs, but there was not a lot of parking space. And so that was what people's discussions was mostly about, the parking space. You know, if in case of emergency and anything happens, how do we get out of this situation? You know, and so that was a big concern. Obviously, if there's more units, there's going to be more vehicles. The parking space is going to be limited. That's going to allow other people, you know, if they have a 2-car driveway, that's going to cause it where like maybe some of your neighbors going to actually have to take one of your parking spaces or something. So that was the biggest complaint, is just parking structure and just there's too many homes in one lot.
So for those of you who don't know what the ADU bonus program, it is that you can build upwards an unlimited amount of ADUs that fit on that physical space. Of course, still to building code. You can't just do 2 units side by side, 100 stories tall, things like that. There's still height requirements and things like that, depending on what part of town you're in, especially with flight patterns and things like that.
Absolutely.
Also, cities had certain ordinances and whatever, but the city of San Diego kind of had this kind of open book on like, just go build however many you can physically fit on the place. But then it created downstream problems. You have congestion issues, you have density problems, ingress, egress issues when it comes to emergency vehicles. And that's all before you even get to any sort of like noise complaints or trash pickup and all that. Cause like, hey, and you mentioned the cul-de-sac thing, Brian. So it's like, if you got the end of the cul-de-sac and the house that has like a much larger square footage on the lot, you can put a lot more ADUs on there. Yeah. But it's like, I saw one person in the comments like, okay, well, what about trash pickup? There's 6 houses on the cul-de-sac, but then you build 40 in the back of one of those 6 houses. Now we got 46 houses and all the trash that comes with that too. So there were some legitimate concerns. It's not just people being griping neighbors in their communities.
Yeah. But you know what? Again, there's also other properties that didn't build that many ADU bonus ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and they're still complaining about that. So there's a complaint a little bit of everything. Some of the pros were that a lot of people need this, especially with the way finances are currently right now. That helps them offset by converting their garage to like either a studio or converting it to a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, where they're going to receive some type of form of rental income to help them offset with their normal monthly bills. Is something that's it's considered a pro for a lot of people. And they're trying to just take this away also for people to prevent them from doing so.
Mm-hmm. I feel the demand was definitely there, and we did see a lot of people take advantage to it. But just like everything, you know, once they full force went with it, you started to see, where the cracks were at, and where things started to begin to fall in between those cracks. So I feel moving forward, this really just puts a cap on the people that actually know how to do it. Everybody's still going to maneuver in their own way. They're still going to be able to profit as much as they want. Maybe not as much, but they'll adjust. But the biggest thing here is that I feel that too many people were feeling like, like all these houses are being built. Where's my space going to go? And now the privacy that you were so dear holding close, now it's basically gone.
Yeah. So do you see their baby, in the regular ADU program, how it used to be was that the size of the ADU you could build was proportionate to the total lot size and the footprint of your main house, and there was like kind of this ratio.
Correct, the FAR.
Do you think that is just going to be basically the new rule, or do you think that there's still going to be some exceptions for certain places where they can go 2-story, 3-story high and maybe build more than 1 or 2 and go to 5 or 10 or 12?
No,
Is there still a case to be made for that?
No, absolutely. They're not just going to remove everything, from a certain lot. Certain lots, it's considered with your FAR, which is your floor area ratio. So a lot of these lots are going to allow for such type units to go up, and you'll be able to go 2-3 units, 2-3 floor, even, just you're going to be able to build on that. The only thing that's going to matter is that lot, what it's going to allow you to build on that lot. Where before you could just have a 5,000 square foot lot and you were building like 8 units on that. It's just a little unrealistic to do that and take advantage of the bonus ADU, which kind of gave a lot more flexibility to some of these builders.
Okay. So do you guys think that ultimately, where do the chips fall for you? Do you think that there being some amendments is a good thing, is a bad thing? Who does it help? Who does this hurt? Give me some of your front line perspective on this.
I think it helps the community members that, obviously want to hold their property, as private as possible and have their communities be, as less congested as it could be. And the people that I guess, don't benefit for them is, the investors or the savvy homeowners that are looking to maximize their profit or maximize, their square footage, to where before you were able to, like Will said, put more than, as much as you could in a 5,000 square lot. I believe now they changed it to, if you're 5,000 or below, you're maxed at for total. If you're in between 5,000 to 10,000 square feet, you're around 5 to 6, and anything 10,000 or more, you could do 7 max, and then it goes into knowing exactly what that space is actually able to do.
Yeah, I just think if you're an investor, depending on your experience of investing, you're gonna start pay more attention to what your appetite is, because there's a lot of investors like myself. I like to stay within the 4 units or under. I like to stay in the single family resident type of financing and not go into the commercial. There's some people that say, I don't want that. I want 8 to 20 units, and so they're going to have to just pay more attention to those lots.
Yeah. So, I think that there's a window where, not a window, I guess there's going to be a sweet spot. I guess that's the better term. There's going to be a sweet spot where the properties that have the larger size lots are still going to be those ones that maybe people are overpaying for on the purchase side, knowing that they can still do all this on the back end. If there's going to be, let's say, a ceiling, no pun intended, maybe no, you know what? Pun intended. If there's going to be a ceiling on the number of units you can do based on proportionate amount of lot square footage, then I would think, looking down the line, that people who are investors or want to buy their own place and do the building like we're talking about, I think they're still going to lean towards those that got more, that have more space, regardless of whatever kind of problems it might cause in the community, simply because there's still a housing demand issue. There's still an affordability issue. It's not, I saw someone in the comments here that's like, if you can't afford a house in San Diego, then move somewhere else where it's cheaper. It's like, okay, but that's like a loaded comment that doesn't consider anything else like your employment and who you work for, and whether you're single or married, or whether you have kids or don't kids, or whether you're taking care of parents that are here. It's like completely disregards all the other variables about someone's life. Just, you can't afford here, go move somewhere else. Like, that's not necessarily the nicest answer,
right?
If it were only that easy, right? But yeah, but and again, like even if you consider the conveniences of San Diego, but there's still a demand in San Diego. There's density issues in San Diego, and even in places where ADUs aren't the main problem, there's still a transportation problem. Yeah. Like, sorry, North Park, it's really hard to get around North Park right now and find a place to park, because everything is like bike lane central, and that's fine too for people who live there and want that. But there's people I know that live there that they say they don't like it. Yeah, and even though it wasn't it was imposed on them, and they have more density with big construction happening more on the apartment and luxury apartment side, and it's not the ADU stuff still. So there's clearly a density or a demand issue for housing in San Diego, and this was an attempt to help maybe solve some of that.
That's what I was going to say. I feel the city also benefits a lot from investors and homeowners, building ADUs, because A, it's revenue, and it also helps with bringing more inventory for people to be able to live it without, the city full on, making it accessible for builders to actually build. It helps out in some sort of way. I'm sure it helps out, not as much as we would want to see, houses, being built for people to be able to, take those spaces, but, it does help.
it does create tax revenue, and I mean that's another part of this. It's like
a business for them as well.
and and I did not hear people go make public comments or not, but there's a part of this I'm sure on the city side, but they have to be looking like, wait a minute, all of this additional square footage, all this reassessment, this is property tax revenue for us. That helps us on our top line of revenue received at the city level.
Yeah.
So this is going to clamp down some of that as it's ratcheted down. I don't know what that means for the budget of the city, but it is a variable that we're going to see the consequence of at some point.
Yeah. I tell you, I never thought that you could actually see the public hearing online. It was very fun and interesting to see all the people's opinions, and you're going, it started at 6 and I had to shut it down it started at 2 p.m. in the afternoon and still at 6, I'm like, I'm done. I got to go. This was a lot. And so the majority of people that attended were against the whole EDUs. And really, again, what they were against is just you're overbuilding in some places.
Yeah.
Where it's creating situations where it should have been foreseen up front, but it also seemed like the city was not paying attention to it and just allowed it, hey, just build it out and then see how it all goes.
You guys remember that house in Winding Walk that they built that was not up to like standards of the community, and it was just a massive house, and every other house was a cookie cutter, but this one house somehow got like a special design, and then
in a planned unit development.
in a planned unit development, and then they went and they made a big deal about it. Why is it that house got to build that, but every house under that block had to stay to the HOA like rules, and they're still able to get it.
There's a house. There's a house in Bonita on the cross street from where I used to live when I grew up, and there's a big house that actually is the size of 2 lots because they had 2 lots, and all the other homes are like single-story homes. There's this huge house.
Just sits.
But my point was, it just looks so unproportionate, and I feel that's how it looks like when you build a huge apartment, quote unquote, ADU complex in the back.
Yeah.
And there's just a small like single family residence neighborhood. It's like, yo, what's going on here?
Typically, I'm not on the side of like increased regulation, but I think this is an example where it's like, well, 2 things at once. It's where you give an inch, they'll take a mile. This is why we're dealing with this, is because they're it's open season on building and this, let's go do it, and people just went and did it. Like,
like a
hey,
gold
wait,
rush.
now it's a problem. The dial's too far to the right. It's hot. Okay, dial it back again. So it's that, and again, I'm not always on the side of like regulation, but this is one where I can honestly, if I'm being completely honest, I understand why they do this. This isn't because I dislike investors or anything like that. It's just I understand why people don't want 40 additional units in their cul-de-sac of 6 houses. I get that because the other look, not everyone in that neighborhood has the same space, can make the same choice. All right, that's fine, but if they've lived over 30 years. This wasn't around 30 years ago.
Yeah.
This wasn't around 10 years ago. So it's not like they made a bad choice back then. We can't like punish people for living where they live and loving their home when their neighbor's doing something that's like maybe negatively affecting or impacting the neighborhood as a whole. So I'm not mad about those. I'm not mad about that either,
No, absolutely. I mean, policies are meant to be changed as you move forward. You think you have everything dialed in, but it's not until you really start building and allowing to builders to kind of go through the motion where you start realizing, well, maybe that shouldn't have been done. Maybe we can retract from that. So they're not saying you shouldn't be building, it's just don't overdo it in some areas. And, there's some savvy investors that already, or I'm going to say investors/builders that already understand the rules, and they're like, wing.
Even better now.
I already know what I'm going to do there.
Right.
I'm going to maximize my profits at its fullest, and who cares about the inconvenience that we pose to the community?
Right. Yeah.
So
that's true.
Again, policies are meant for people to get in there. They will change. They'll adjust. And I think, to adjust policies, you have to be going through them to see the flaws.
Yeah. I think this is overall probably for the better. I mean, I know this is an early take. It's probably for the better when it comes to some of these density and congestion problems. I think that, well, if this is displacing people that were intending to move to these places, they're going to end up somewhere else in San Diego. So this doesn't necessarily solve the demand issue at all, because let's say you're not allowed to build 40 anymore. You're only allowed to build 10 that's 30 people that still got to go somewhere else, or 30 households that got to go looking somewhere else. So I could see in the city of San Diego, instead of ADUs building up, I can see that demand spreading out into other areas and maybe looking for spots there.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a difference, right? The ADUs that I'm building, it's a 1 story. And now that I'm adding the 2nd story, it almost feels like I can see you. I can see your backyard. Like privacy just automatically there is none.
Yeah.
Because of that fact.
Yeah,
and
eye in
it's
the
pretty
sky.
crazy. Yeah. You're just looking, you're like, oh, it doesn't conform to the area because most of the properties in the area are, single story homes. But at the same time, hey, families do grow. And if you want to stay in that same property for a longer period of time, there's a lot of people that also build up.
Yeah.
And they don't get punished for it. So I think the ADU rules, the great thing about it, I see ADU staying around for a long time. I do disagree that you shouldn't be building so many units on one lot. Pay attention to the surrounding. If there's plenty of parking, if you're able to take off your garbage cans, and so little things like that. In case of a fire, can the fire department still be able to go out there and assist?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
All right. Well, I think we're probably going to see this one again once everything kind of settles in. But I wanted to bring it up because it's kind of the talk of the town as it is here in real estate in San Diego. So